All right, let's do some reacts. This came highly recommended in chat. Like, actually, like, multiple people told me that I have to watch this video. I'm surprised because the video has a great title, great thumbnail, and it only has 113 views over 2 days. It doesn't make any sense to me. I've noticed, like, people just aren't caring about Star Citizen stuff. So I'm going to put the link in chat right away. This is from Odd Job Entertainment. I think I've reacted to a couple of their videos, but I think I've reacted to their videos before. I've gone through this kind of process of, like, I usually ask everybody. I don't know how to contact this person or anything like that, but what I usually do is one, react, make people aware of that creator, and if I never get a response of like, hey, yeah, it's cool to react to my videos, just wait a certain amount of time or whatever, then I usually never react to them again. So let's highlight this creator because many people said this was a really good video, so let's see how it is.
PvP has a major problem in Star Citizen.
Hold on, I was muted.
PvP has a major problem in Star Citizen. That problem is, it's not happening. I know this because I am part of the problem. I'll dabble in Arena Commander where the stakes are extremely low,
okay,
but due to the apparent gap in skill between myself and dedicated PvP players, I actively avoid it in the persistent universe. For PvP to flourish in Star Citizen,
that was some rough racing, buddy. I got you, Odd Job. If you want to improve your times, I could teach you.
the game needs mechanisms that will bring me into the line of fire of PvP players.
Oh,
right now, those mechanisms don't really exist.
Like this take.
We can see some fledgling attempts at this in the form of missions that exist already in the game. Things like In the Wake of Disaster and ECN network intrusion missions. The problem with
Yeah, and I wonder what he's going to say the problem is, but it's weird that people aren't drawn to these events as much as they should be. And I always go down the route of, like, if the items at Wake of Disaster inside the cargo were not just unique, but uniquely useful for really useful things, like we don't have crafting yet, that's what I always lean on, then all sorts of organizations would be fighting over Wake of Disaster all the time. Same thing with Jumptown and situations like this. The issue with the game is the draw of just money isn't enough because you can make money without risk everywhere else. So why take the risk? So if your only motivation is money, well, you would just do bounties, bunkers, salvage, like literally anything else than something that involves PvP, right? You also can't plan around Wake because it's just random. Yeah, but it's not random. It comes up every 2 hours. Like, that's Wake. And I think it should be more random. But the thing about Wake is, when Wake pops, everybody should freak out and get excited. Right? Mining, yeah, you could name a million things that are a lot safer than going to Wake of Disaster, right? But the thing about Wake is when it pops, everybody should get excited, and they don't. When Jumptown is live, everyone should get excited, but they aren't. Why? You have to ask yourself why, and I think the answer is very clear and very obvious, and it's what I've been preaching for the last, 5 years. And we still haven't resolved that problem, right? And it is what it is. It sounds like they're working on it now, so I'm just going to chill and be patient, but I'm curious what Oddjob has to say.
These, though, is that players like me, who likely comprise the vast majority of players, can still just ignore them. This video topic has the potential to trigger a lot of people. It's great for engagement, so by all means, say what you want in the comments below. But the reality is, the passive way we have been playing the game has never been the intended route for Star Citizen.
Ooh, okay, so this is a dangerous and slippery slope to go down. Anytime somebody or a creator or a forum poster or a Redditor tells another player what Star Citizen is, they're wrong. They're always going to be wrong because CIG doesn't know what Star Citizen is. It's been the best damn space sim ever. It's been an MMO. It's been a universe sim. They are clueless as we are. they may not be anymore now that they're pushing towards this 1.0. They may have like a vision that they're going to stick to. We'll see. I imagine that vision will change over the 3 to 5 years it's going to take to get to 1.0. But I still think that any creator or any player doesn't know what Star Citizen is. Yeah, it's been called Space Tarkov. Yesterday we watched a video where somebody was calling it GTA in space. Eve, right? Like if it's all these things, guess what it is? It's nothing. That's what it is. Okay? If it's all these things, there's only one thing that it is, and that's nothing. And that's what it is right now. It hasn't figured out what it is yet. Right? So I am concerned about this. But let me tell you something so far. This guy, I know we're a minute into the video, but this guy's awesome. So far, I really like him.
You're not supposed to be able to avoid players entirely. That's inherent in an MMO. If you go through the literal years of material that CIG has put out about the eventual persistent universe, you'll find some consistent through lines. 1. You will run into, rely on, and oppose other players in the game.
Yes.
There is no fully PvE experience. You can reduce your exposure, but you cannot eliminate it entirely. 2.
I think that's going to change, and I think that needs to change a lot more than it is now.
2. Even industry players are supposed to have some level of risk. Death of a Spaceman is for everybody, not just PvP players.
That's fair, though. That's a fair point.
So today I want to talk about things that CIG could do today to make PvP more common.
In case you were unaware of what Death of a Spaceman is, Star Citizen has a mechanic which I find to be incredibly stupid, just personally, and I don't think it's going to work, and I think it's eventually going to change in some way, shape, or form, where your character can permanently die. Right? Your character can permanently die. So let's say I make SaltEMike the character, and I die one too many times because you're like kind of like a clone, and you can come back over and over again, but the DNA from the clone gets worse, and then eventually they can't use it anymore, and your character dies. You like pass your stuff down to the next of kin, and they maintain some of your reputation, right?
Bring it to players across the board, and therefore start getting critical information about the way the game is shaping up. If PvP was much more common in the PU, there would be a period of frustration, but as players learned how to fight each other, I believe that it would normalize at some point. So while
I know a lot of people hate master modes. A lot of people hate master modes, but that is a big step into making PvP more accessible to everyone. And the best players are not going to be able to dominate as much, but the bad players are going to be able to get involved, right? Where we have a community that is largely PvP adverse because it was so difficult to get into before. But if you run into a scenario like what we see on the screen right now, where it's like, oh shit, there's a bunch of people here, you might be more inclined to defend yourself than Alt F4, Bedlog, Run, all these other things. Say what you want about master modes. There are a ton of problems with it. This is one of the positives, right? Is that there were a lot of people in that PvP tournament that I was in that are widely considered horrible at PvP, myself included, that were able to participate in the event and able to compete at a level in the event because Master Modes has brought up that thing, that skill floor. There you go.
All these points may seem one-sided now.
It may be beneficial for the game
long term. It brings the game more in line with its proposed vision, and I believe they'd be a net positive down the line. Right now, how much data is CIG really getting about how a cargo ship feels against a fighter? This is critical data to have if piracy is going to be more common. So, what can they do? First, has to do with how they implement cargo missions. These are
First has to do with how they implement engineering. Like, again, I've kind of avoided the engineering demo thing on Arena Commander lately, just because I think that they have a few more things that they need to do to kind of bring it to a fun place. I really should do it more. They've added a lot more ships, and I probably will when I'm like mega bored, or I've just more like not been interested in herding cats and trying to get them in and organized and all that stuff. It's annoying, but that mode will determine the interactions between pirates or PKs, whichever one you happen to come across, and let's call them industry players, right?
Supposed to come out with the upcoming 3.23.2 update. These will have players taking on cargo to transport it to different locations. We haven't really had an opportunity to try these out just yet, but we can look at the current state of the game and make some predictions about the issues that will probably pop up.
Okay.
First off, Star Citizen has struggled to differentiate between the different sized cargo ships. We do have box missions, and these definitely cater to small ships. In the mid to large tier cargo ships, though, there's little preventing you from doing the same activities in all of them. I can trade barrel just as easily in a C2 as I can in my Constellation. The problem with this is that we are not concentrating cargo trading into true routes. If your cargo traders are not being funneled along specific routes, then piracy is not
Odd job. Go full screen here, man. What's going on?
Impossible. We've seen this reflected on stream with Summit, who in spite of this has managed to make some content really entertaining, but by his own admission, it basically boils down to waiting for hours for players to come by and give him a chance to tuck into their ship.
I think that's a server meshing fix, honestly. You add more players to the server, you're not going to be waiting.
Compared to the vision we've been fed about piracy, this is a pretty sad presentation. The piracy that CAG has painted for us may look something like what follows, keeping in mind that this is just one possible scenario. You and your pirate crew wait along a major shipping lane with a Mantis's quantum snare. The rest of your...
That's going to be the biggest interesting thing to look at when it comes to cargo missions, cargo in general, whatever crafting may end up being like. What's a major trading lane? What is a major trading lane? Is it the runs from one planet to another? Is it the jump points? So I think there's still so many questions up in the air. I think pirates are going to find themselves finding piracy a lot at some point. But at the same time, the current way that quantum travel works and the way that even the direction it's going with these like shorter jumps in any direction, it's still hard to see what it's going to be.
Crew is composed of a C2, or perhaps the Drake Ironclad and a couple Buccaneers. It takes a while, but you are able to snag a C2 out of its quantum travel from Crusader to Hurston. The C2 is not defenseless, however. It immediately starts lighting up your pirate crew, and it seems it even has a Gladius in tow for added defense.
The C2 is largely not defended very well. A2 has a bit more defense, but unfortunately, I think one of the issues that a lot of these industry ships have come across, well, C2 is very much... And I think a lot of people pointed this out to me when I talked about the Ironclad, is that all of the guns point down. Because the C2 is not meant to move commodities. It's meant to move vehicles. So you're clearing the ground of ground targets with that ship and not air targets. But the problem is that instead of kind of seeing the way players are going to interact with their ships, they tried to tell us how we're supposed to play by designing ships certain ways and not pivoting away from that. The C2 should totally have a turret on the top of the ship, but it doesn't. Right? And most of the time C2s are solo. That is a statement I would largely ignore because this is a made-up scenario in the first place. And I do believe when there are real stakes, players will crew their ships if it makes sense to crew their ships, right? And I don't even think it makes sense to crew C2 if you're traveling through space because you're never going to be able to defend it anyway, at least in the current way the game works. And that's why I'm talking about engineering, right? That's why engineering kind of comes into play here, is how will the C2 play in this scenario once engineering comes in? How quickly will shields go down? How easily will components be taken out? So on and so forth, right? How will repair work? There's a ways to go there. And that's what defines the outcome of these scenarios. I think it's going to be over 50% of the interaction, right? Is the straight up stats and the way the ships work is going to determine whether or not you could take them. You're starting to see it in master modes now. If you're in a Buccaneer, you just don't take fights with certain ships, right?
After a vicious fight, you're able to secure their surrender, and you start transferring the cargo from their C2 into your ironclad. You all need to work quickly, however. UEE law enforcement is not far behind. This is but one of many scenarios that should be possible under the larger umbrella of piracy.
Guys, thoughts on when he said UEE is not far behind? Because you would likely be catching them like here, where the UEE has no presence and there's no monitored zone. That's my only thing that I would say is probably not going to happen.
But we run into problems trying to make this happen in reality. The first is that if I'm in a C2 going from Crusader to Hurston, I can depart from Yella, Selen, Dabar, and the main planet.
Yep.
If we know the distances between each of Crusader's moons and Crusader, as well as the distances between those moons and Hurston, and finally knowing the distance between Crusader and Hurston, we can do some math to figure out the angular difference between all 4 possible routes from Hurston to the Crusader planetary system. Then, now that we know those angles, and knowing that the maximum intercept range of the RSI Mantis is currently 20 kilometers...
Or you just use that website, right? Snare plan?
We can determine the maximum distance from Hurston that enables the Mantis to cover at least 2 of these shipping lanes. If we use the lowest possible value, we should have the distance that allows a Mantis to capture any ship between Crusader and Hurston. This ends up being 68 kilometers approximately. I don't know about you, but this seems extremely disappointing.
Good at all.
The ships have essentially arrived at that point, and this doesn't give much of a chance at all for any meaningful engagement to occur. Anything past 68 kilometers means you will only be monitoring one of the 4 possible routes between these 2 areas. Unless the route specifically from Crusader to Hurston were especially popular, you can kiss goodbye to any dream of catching someone in deep space. The distances are just too great. Now that we understand the problem, how do we fix it? Well, Ray's Guide put out a video some time ago talking about the trade routes and relates it to the hub and spoke system we use today on Earth. I want to expand on this idea and adapt it to our discussion here.
Okay.
To start, your large freight movers like the Hull C, and at this point in the game, anything transporting more than 200 SCU of cargo should be relegated to transport between planetary systems. Taking a C2 down to a moon service is the equivalent of taking a cargo plane or shipping barge to your local farm. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
Instead,
unless you're talking distribution centers, you would be correct.
You would expect to see these larger vessels going between distribution hubs with the cargo equivalent of all the farms in the region. Mapping this into Star Citizen, the largest ships we have in game currently should be making their trips between the planets or the orbital stations like Seraphim, Virginie, Port Tressler, and Everest Harbor.
Now here's the thing. I believe this is what's going to happen. I believe they've kind of hinted at this in terms of the cargo missions. That's what I think is going to happen. Bring back the Air and Halo gates. They never existed.
Your mid-tier ships then handle the interplanetary system cargo. These are your ships moving up to 200 SCU, going from the orbital stations down to the planet proper and to its surrounding Lagrange points.
Also, there's another problem here, is you can't tell people what ships they can and cannot fly in a sandbox. Can you? Bottom left, what's the moon? Yeah, let me move my camera for you. There you go. It doesn't really say, but it's like, it looks like selling, let's say, right? So, like, he's trying to say, all right, well, small cargo ships do this, medium cargo ships do this, and large cargo ships do that. Well, how do you force that when you really can't, right? So you do it based off of efficiency. That one of the arguments I made is that one of the very easy ways to force it is small landing pads at the outposts, where if you don't land on the landing pad, like, you have to request landing, you land on the landing pad, they allow you to land on the landing pad, kind of thing. And if you don't, you're fined, you're whatever, right? There's something bad that happens to you for not landing on the landing pad. That is a very hard kind of coded way to be like, yeah, you're not allowed to do this, you know? But then when you get into medium, it gets a little weird, but...
Finally, your small cargo ships, anything less than 100 SCU for instance, are doing the deliveries of cargo to specific locations such as Tram and Myers. The same applies going in reverse as well. These small ships collect from the specific locations to take it to a collection point until it goes up the chain and across planetary spaces.
It's just a matter of how do they make the smaller ships more efficient to do this? But then there's the whole other idea of, like, if I'm flying a C2, well, then I can take 10 small missions at once. And it would be super fun because I would be like, all right, everything going to Hurston over here, everything going to ArcCorp over there, and then you're just traveling all over the place, right? You're just traveling everywhere. It's great.
Approach would do a couple things. One, the lower value pilots moving only a small portion of cargo would have much lower risk due to their volume and wide diversity of routes.
As you say, though, it's a sandbox. They don't need to do any of this shit. Let players do what they want and work the game around it gradually. I can respect the work the game around it gradually. The issue here is, though, is that's what's happening now. So the working around it gradually, I think, is what they need to try to figure out now. One of the issues in the game is you have a number of ships that can run cargo that are called cargo ships that don't have 600 SCU of cargo or more. But they haven't really had their day, and they haven't really had their place. Right? I've been watching Marquis Dragon again. I actually haven't. I don't know what reference you're getting this from. Is it because we're talking about cargo, maybe? But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But those ships haven't been useful. Yeah, I guess like what Nav says in chat. That's the argument that both myself and Oddjob are trying to make, is if you make these useful, there'll be more trades going, things will make more sense. If you want to talk about the piracy side of things, pirates can hit the certain trade lanes for the certain types of materials that they're looking for, right? And it all just starts to make sense. It is a sandbox as it is your choice what ship to fly, what missions to take, what lanes to pirate. But it makes more sense in terms of choice. If you have all the choice in the world, but only one of them makes sense, is that really a sandbox? Is that good sandbox design? No. I think a sandbox has a lot of sand, but a bunch of tools to interact with that sand and mold it into what you want. Right now, there's only 2 cargo ships that make sense to use. There's not enough tools. I don't like sand really either, but I mean, come on, it's...
The higher volume pilots flying a C2 had better have those turrets manned because they are flying much more value in cargo along much more predictable routes. Because their traffic is orbital station to orbital station or planet to planet, rather than...
They may not be running more valuable cargo, but they are running more volume of cargo. Therefore, the entire thing is probably more valuable.
Monitoring an area of space just off of Hurston, now the pirates can monitor the shipping lane connecting the 2 planets. It's still a game of chance. Does the Mantis activate their snare at the right time? But now it's significantly more likely to occur. Hopefully, it's likely enough that cargo players are actually encouraged to bring along fire support, as we've constantly been told to do.
The only reason that this could be okay for now is that we're split into so many servers. But if you do, like, I am a big proponent of hard-coded trade lanes between planets, right? And that will make piracy more easy and so on and so forth, and it just player interactions better. But I am not okay with it if we're only in Stanton or only in Stanton and Pyro, and we're all in one server, let's say, which is not going to happen. It only works because we're split into many servers, where let's use Space Cutlet, like my favorite pirate, and Mongrel Squad, my other favorite pirates, are each on their own individual servers, but there's a number of other servers that are running where you're not going to get pirated on. But if we were all in just one little spot, if we were all in one big server and we only had Stanton and Pyro to play in, you would constantly be getting pulled out of it would just ruin the game and would be no fun, right? The reason these things work in Eve, the reason these things work in other games is because the play space is so much larger in terms of places to travel to and from, where Star Citizen just hasn't grown to that point yet, right? It just hasn't gotten there yet. But it will. Shadow Moses, I wouldn't call them pirates, man. Those are more your like big PvP corporations, like that's their goals at least, right? Ram, LR, Avenger Squadron, and Shadow Moses. Those are the four that come to mind for me. I'm sure there's others, but those are like your kind of like your goons and Pandemic Horde and that kind of stuff from Eve. That's a totally different category than your like 5-man pirate little group, you know what I mean? So that's my feelings on like hard-coded trade lanes, is like they need to happen, but the game isn't ready to support them yet.
Now, I could be wrong, but it seems like all of this is possible with reputation and commodity limits. If all the individual locations, like Tram and Myers, sell less than one...
Maybe not cuts need to go away, but if you're going to travel between Hurston and Crusader, it should just be a lane that everybody travels in. But again, there should be hundreds of lanes for people to travel in, and the pirates have to choose one, you know?
100 SCU total in all of their combined commodities. That would take all the larger vessels away from the moons. If transporting bulk goods requires reputation, you can prevent small ships from taking on the much more dangerous cargo between orbital stations. The stations would be selling...
Otherwise, you need this system that you have here. Sorry, I was not listening, so I'm going to kind of go back a little bit. I apologize.
Seems like all of this is possible with reputation and commodity limits. If all the individual locations, like Tram and Myers, sell less than 100 SCU total in all of their combined commodities, that would take all the larger vessels away from the moons. If transporting bulk goods...
Theoretically. But like I said, I would take a large cargo ship, take 10 missions, fill up my ship, and do all sorts of crazy logistics with it. Possibly. If that ends up being fun. In my mind, I think it might be fun, but I don't know if it will.
Goods requires reputation, you can prevent small ships from taking on the much more dangerous cargo between orbital stations. The stations would be selling cargo on the order of hundreds or thousands of SCU, but to gain access to these vast quantities would require reputation with the Cargo Guild to prove you're capable of making the delivery safely and in a timely manner. This restricts the massive cargo loads to only a few of the possible shipping lanes. I suppose that these ships could still take a more indirect route to avoid any snares, and maybe that's part of the hustle. Figuring out a safer route that takes more time but avoids trouble could be a consideration for the enterprising cargo trader.
But only if and only if planets don't rotate, or you don't rotate with them, right? And only if the lanes are hard-coded, and you are on that lane, and that's it. That's the only way that can work, because there's... If I, again, like you said, if I jump from, or you just, hell, the real simple solution is the bubble is just massive. The bubble with these ships that snare, just make it huge. What if you quadruple the size, quintuple the size of it, and you're just pulling people from all sorts of directions? Is that a good thing? Probably not, right? But it's one of the solutions to a problem. But how many more problems does it create?
This runs the risk, however, of not making your deadlines and losing reputation as a result. Critically, with the advent of the cargo missions soon to drop in-game, I hope we see unverified missions tied to them as well. And here I'm not talking about just trading illegitimate goods. Rather, just like with the ECN network intrusion mission, if a cargo trader accepts a high-value, high-risk cargo mission, there should be a chance of creating a piracy counterpart that leaks the predicted cargo route and enables pirates to intercept them.
That is an interesting take.
This is probably one of the most direct ways to get pirates doing pirate things, as well as getting cargo traders to travel with protection, as has been the described intention so many times.
What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? If you accept a contract and the game tells you it's risky, but what they mean by risky is it spawns a pirate mission on the other side. Do you guys like that or hate that? I mean, I think that they've done that quite a bit. So it isn't outside of the realm of possibility here. Because the initial thing that I was going to say was I don't like the idea of calling a mission risky when there is no risk. Like, you don't know if it's risky. But if that is a thing, that makes it risky. But it also doesn't feel like a sandbox. Right? When you do that, it feels too forced. It doesn't feel right to me. Like, I like the idea, if you label a mission risky, you make it risky. But I also don't like the idea of, like, hello, pirates, you know? I way more like the idea of, hey, these trade lanes are traveled often. Pirates decide to pirate those trade lanes, kind of thing. I think that that's way better. Personally. But I don't hate the idea, but I think it definitely has its problems. It's weird.
From the cargo trader's perspective, not much would change here. The major differences would be that, knowing the high risk of their cargo, they are much more inclined to have their turrets filled and an escort with them. On the piracy side, however, when the cargo trader accepts their mission, it spawns an interception mission for the pirates. It has certain key details about the point of origination.
If you get a god marker on your cargo, that mission will never be played. I don't think it should be a god marker. I think it should straight up just be told where you're coming from and where you're going. That's it. God markers need to go completely away. They should never be in this game. That's stupid. There's also the idea that I see people typing in chat about the like danger being NPCs as well. That should also be a thing, of course.
And the destination.
What's a god marker? So if you play the game and you do bad things in the game in monitored areas, you'll get a crime rating. Think GTA. If you hit level 3 of, we call it crime stat in our game, then you'll get a mission to kill you. Every player will see a mission to kill you potentially, and they can become bounty hunters and send you to jail. So if you hit level 3, so it is GTA in space, yes. So if you hit level 3, everybody gets a mission to kill you, and it literally is a wall hack. It tells everybody exactly where you are. Not just the general area, exactly where you are. It's so stupid.
And maybe they have a QT marker to place them along the predicted route of the cargo ship. Assuming they time it right, then they're able to pull the C2 out of QT as described previously.
Edison,
their
not
reward
in a
for the
given
mission
system,
is reputation with some criminal entity and the cargo they just stole, assuming they are successful. If the cargo trader wins the skirmish, then they get a bonus to reputation and currency as a form of hazard pay. It should also probably be considered to give ships that were recently snared some kind of immunity to snares for a period of time after, but maybe it's not needed. It's probably best to just see how it goes, but we wouldn't want players getting snared 5 times on their route.
No, what should really happen, and this is definitely coming from my experience in EVE, is the type of components that you choose determine how easily you're snared, but it comes at a cost, right? It comes at a cost of quantum travel speed or general acceleration or power to weapons or something, right? You could take it any direction that you want, but you should definitely be able to put something on your ship that makes it harder for you to get snared, but it has to come at a negative cost, right? Towards something else. Or you could put something in that gives you way more powerful shields, but you're snared more easily, whatever, right? Like, choice should matter.
Another possible consideration is changes to the quantum travel system. Quantum travel at the moment takes a straight linear path between any 2 locations. What if it didn't? If we step back to the star system view, we see that there are 3 routes branching from any of the 4 planets in the system. Hurston serves as the center hub of our larger wheel diagram as it sits roughly in the middle of everything.
Even that's not completely true. Yeah, no, but you're mentioning like jump point sizes and needing to take longer routes. I think you're right, Edison. But at least that's how I read your comment. Is that will make a lot more sense when there's 5, 10 systems in the game, but we're very far away from that. When you're in a given system, your hull C missions are done on these green lines. That's it. Your other missions are done, and you might be coming into the video later than that. But I'm just saying it doesn't make sense now what you're saying, that's all.
If we simply alter the routes from their direct route to more of a spline shape, then we can make large sections of these routes between planets overlap. This makes a lot more sizable area where piracy can occur between these planets. I also wonder if this would make quantum travel feel more varied as you watch your ship make wide, sweeping arcs through space.
This is fucking cool.
One elephant in the room is that my map diagram is based on the current static positions of the planets. But we have been told that in the future, they should have realistic orbits that affect lane distance and travel times. I think the underpinning principles I'm describing here still apply to a more dynamic system, just that the relative distances and the overall shape may shift and warp with time. A big inspiration for making this video is watching SaltEMike's coverage of clips where Summit was expressing some frustrations. At one point, Mike questions the utility of having a refinery.
Kind of hoping this baits Mike into reacting, then it'll be Mike reacting to me, reacting to Mike, to reacting to Summit. I didn't know. No, I had no idea. Well, you baited me, dude. I don't know if he's going to play it, so I'm going to remove my cam for a second. But I guess he is okay with me reacting to his videos. Again, this video is awesome. So I'm hope he's cool with it in the future, because if all of his other videos are anything like this one, I'm really enjoying it.
Be so remote to get the best deal on refinery costs.
Why is it all the way out there? What if they put it right in the middle of everything? What if you put that station, just in case I was talking over him, there's a really good refinery and it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's stupid. Right in the middle of everything. And all of a sudden, you have a little bit of a trade lane for prospectors and for moles and for miners, right? What if you did that? What if you added refining to salvage at these stations? You know what I mean? What if you created a situation where everybody wants to go to one place? What if? Like, we keep doing these things where it's like, oh, we want player choice, right? But one of the player choices should be, do I take the risk or do I go to the simple place?
Odd job from the editing bay here. I wanted to add some clarity to why I'm talking about this clip from SaltEMike's original stream. There is a difference between a trade hub and a trade lane. A lane means that you have a linear...
Which is why I love the idea of his curves, because it makes a point at which a bunch of lanes dissect before they get to the hub.
Path along which pirates can camp to find their quarry. A hub means that players are going to be approaching from all different sides. One of them requires that you have a team located at the location itself, and the other requires that you have your team placed along the route thereof.
No, I think you can do both. If your solution comes in, which I think is very good, then you just park right there and it's fine, right?
Is right to want places that bring people together and get players centrally located, but I think the way that he's thinking about it might be a little bit mistaken. If you have a refinery that's placed way out there,
let me move my cam again.
That creates a singular route that players have to take in order to get to that location.
That's not true, though, because you're coming from 50 different directions. It's still the same problem, right?
That creates your trade lane that players can then be pirated on.
Because in my example, it's mining. I could be mining at Daymar, or I could be mining at ArcCorp.
If you have a refinery be centrally located, that creates a trade hub that is going to be overall safer from the lane perspective because you can approach from any number of a different direction. But
man, this is Star Citizen. You can always approach from different directions. That's the problem. That's the whole point of the beginning of the video.
If there is a large oppositional force at the station controlling the airspace, then you have a PvP event. I want to relate that to what we've been building here so far. If piracy depends on having a predictable area to find players in transit, then placing a refinery out by Microtech or out past...
Test? What, to see if you're banned? There you go.
It, which would be better, effectively provides that choke point. The problem is, CIG has yet to provide a real reason for the choke point to be a true benefit worth that time and risk and a feasible tactic to loitering pirates. But if the reward for refining there were higher and the means of getting there equally limited, then you create another opportunity for PvP to organically occur. Conversely, if your refinery is centrally located, then players can approach from all directions and be more relatively safe. The only way to control that kind of station would be to have a large oppositional force at the station itself.
I gotta read what that says. Keep in mind you be contending with station defenses as well until such a time that an entity can overrun defenses to commandeer the turrets. I mean, I think we're coping there a little bit. We'll have to see.
At the station itself. What CIG could do with this is put these rewards on a rotation. If I knew that a week from now I could get an extra 25% yield if I refine my ore at a specific location, I'd be more likely to hold onto it in my hangar and bring it out for a larger bulk job.
Well, they can't tell you it's coming, but I don't hate this idea.
Let's assume that the station in question doesn't accept more material for storage after reaching capacity, thereby preventing players from stockpiling there ahead of time.
SaltEMike, will this also be more of a thing when they add belt gates that people have to pass through to get to the inner and outer planets? Hit the brakes, brother. Hit the brakes. Stop believing everything CIG devs say and start believing what they're actually working on. Do we really believe that's going to be a thing anymore? I would love for it to be a thing. I would love for it to be a thing. But they were just about ready to ship it 5 years ago. What happened? Somebody decided they either thought it was a bad idea, somebody thought it was too hard, the entity count was too high, the gates were too big, or fuck it, there's more important priorities. So in case people don't know, there is I think Crusader, I don't remember what the closest planet is and the furthest planet are, but I think in the orbit around, in between Crusader and ArcCorp, there's like a gap. And within that gap is a giant system-wide asteroid belt that you cannot pass through, apparently, without going through a gate. This was an intended feature. It's called Aaron's Halo, and there would be Aaron's Halo gates that you would quantum travel to. You would literally quantum travel to the gates. Then the gates kind of open up a lane that allows you to get to that other part of the orbit of the system itself. They never made it. I'm not convinced they are going to make it. It would be a great choke point. It would be awesome. But I don't think they're going to do it. So given that I don't think they're going to do it, I've kind of kept it out of my conversation when it comes to these types of things, because they just, like, CIG likes to say when we don't say anything about it, it's moving along just fine. But I can, like, put my scroll list of the 10,000 things they have talked about and we're so close to being done that are not done, and just read them off in an old English accent and prove that idea completely fucking wrong.
I have a chance of getting a significant bonus, but I've now put myself at higher risk as well. This kind of honeypot scheme applies across other industries as well, and hints at the second thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
The original Jumptown was great because it was a singular location that attracted lots of traffic.
Yep.
CIG, seeing this popularity, wanted to capitalize on it, but they implemented more locations. This, in effect, diluted the effect of Jumptown and kneecapped its popularity.
That's weird, though, because there's not more than one location running at one time. So it creates that idea that he just mentioned where, like, oh, at this location, you're getting 20% more ore. Okay, well, the location of Jumptown changes.
Popularity. So what can we do instead? Rather than spreading players out, we know we need to concentrate them to limited locations. For cargo trading, this could take the form of a location having a blowout sale, thus offering steep margins on profit. For mining, this could be a comet that touches down, creating an area of concentrated high-value ores. And just in case Chris Roberts sees this, the players don't need to actually see the comet. CIG could make a small trailer and upload it on YouTube, but we don't need Comet Physics Tier 0 for this to happen.
True.
All they need to do is temporarily mark an area and boost the value of the ores in that area and telegraph it to players. This would attract all the miners in the system, and the better armed industrial team will be the ones to reap the benefits. In both these cargo and mining examples, this is going to concentrate these industrial players in one area, and then along one lane as they go to either sell or refine their wares.
Honestly,
when combined with what we've already talked about. So there's a number of overlapping effects. One, you increase the likelihood that players run into each other, and this leads to a higher probability for PvP to occur. And this increased player interaction also serves as a way to cheat the feeling of a living universe. Right now it feels pretty empty, but there are still 100 players every time you log on. We're just so far apart that we don't run into each other all that often, except at major landing ports.
But also you need to be able to kind of be on your own and do your own thing. That's why I do believe there should be some really safe places. The reward aspect should not be there. The reward should just be the friends you made along the way.
When other key technologies are brought online. Server meshing is still very necessary to increase player counts. But without ways to actually bring people together, will a server with 400 people feel just as lonely?
Yes.
Quanta is supposed to be the engine behind our dynamic economy, but it could still be a long way out. Can't we get some semblance of interaction before then, even if it means faking it to a degree? The things discussed here today are all things that CIG could do today to improve the experience of players across the board. In conclusion, CIG could start placing a lot more kinds of honeypots on rotation to push and pull players to different locations.
Yep.
They could also adjust commodity limits and reputation to diversify cargo ships and concentrate traders along actual shipping lanes. Then they can also tie legitimate cargo missions to piracy counterparts.
And again, I think all of these conversations are totally fine in the short term. I think crafting will eventually do this, like, organically.
These could be in-game tomorrow, unless there's some detail I'm not seeing here. Any or all of these would have the overall effect of bringing people together and causing more interactions to occur. I think that this would be a net positive, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Other than that, like, share, and subscribe.
That was a great video.
Until next time, this is Odd Job Entertainment, signing off.
I thought that video was really, really good. I think I see why it ended up in video react requests, and so many of you guys linked it to me over the last day, is because of that little bait in the middle, I'm assuming. But that was a really, really good video, and it was a really good watch, and I appreciate it. I think he's got a good... Yeah, like Voidy said, has a good handle on Star Citizen, has a good understanding of the game, and also has a good head on his shoulders about probably what should be done. My favorite thing out of the entire video was the spline idea, because it solves a lot of the problems of, yeah, we're coming from like a million different directions, but we intersect at a certain point. All of the quantum travel lanes intersect at a point. And then pirates can just be like, I'm just going to stand at that intersection, and that's it, right? But again, I think that only works when we have a lot more places to go, right? We need a lot more places to go, and that's important. So before that kind of stuff can happen, otherwise it's going to be kind of exhausting. But I don't think we're going to get to like one big server within the next 3 to 5 years anyway. So I think it's kind of a moot point. But in general, cargo needs to have risk. Cargo needs to have reward. Piracy should not be this ridiculous and boring and hard. Player interaction, I should say. I shouldn't even call it piracy. Should just call it player interaction. Should not be this difficult. And I like all of his ideas to try to make it happen. Obviously, I didn't agree with everything, but I think most of, in general, the channel was really, really, or the video was really, really good. The channel seems really, really good. So let me link it to you guys again. Make sure you go like and subscribe to him and show him some love, because he definitely deserves it.